It's actually completely wild when you just sit back and think about it. Way back in the day, humans really only needed the sun to figure out when they were safe. Nighttime meant hiding from predators, and daytime meant you could actually survive. That one incredibly simple need kicked off this chaotic, endless cycle of invention that ended up changing how we exist forever. Imagine the intense pressure of being an early farmer out there. You're standing in a field, constantly watching the moon and the stars, purely because those changing shapes were your absolute only calendar. If you read the pattern wrong, you're planting seeds at the worst possible moment and literally starving before winter hits. Reading the stars wasn't just some cute hobby, it was pure survival. Eventually, people started noticing tree shadows shrinking and growing as the day went on. That moving shadow naturally became the earliest daily clock. The Egyptians got so inspired by this that they built these massive, towering stone pillars called obelisks just to cast long shadows on the sand, breaking up the day. It was basically like a giant foam finger tracking the sun across the sky. But here's the hilarious catch to that whole system. Those heavy stone clocks were entirely useless on a cloudy day. And obviously, they gave up the ghost the absolute second the sun went down. Humanity desperately needed a way to keep tracking time when the sky just wasn't cooperating. So they completely pivoted. They'd started poking tiny holes in bowls so water would drip out super slowly, taking exactly an hour to empty. They actually used these in ancient law courts to keep things totally fair. A speaker got a bowl of water, and when the dripping stopped, boom, your turn is over. That led to this completely chaotic escalation of elemental clocks. Water freezes in the cold, totally ruining the tool. So people tried fire. Chinese monks tied little weights to burning incense to act as an alarm, which was totally genius until they accidentally burnt whole buildings down. Then came sand. Sand doesn't freeze, but some poor guy had to stand there, constantly flipping an hourglass all day long. The drama shifts over to Europe, where these incredibly stressed out monks were terrified of committing a terrible sin by missing their strict prayer times. They desperately needed an automatic alarm, so they invented heavy, clumsy iron machines using ropes and metal wheels strictly to ring large church bells. In fact, these original machines didn't even have hands or faces. The word clock actually just translates to bell. You kind of have to laugh at how clumsy these scraping metal gears were, though. The irony is just so rich. These massively complicated iron machines lost up to 2 full hours a day. Entire towns still had to keep a basic, old-school sundial around strictly to fix their fancy new mechanical clocks. Things totally changed when a young Galileo, back in 1581, just sat zoning out with his thoughts, watching a church lamp swing back and forth in perfect time. He realized a swinging weight actually keeps a remarkably steady beat. That one simple observation eventually led Christian Huygens to build a gear-controlling pendulum clock in 1656. With the pendulum involved, tracking time suddenly got incredibly exact. We went from losing 2 hours to losing just a single minute a day. Think about that difference. Losing 1 minute out of a whole day is exactly like dropping a single fry from a massive fast food combo meal. You barely even notice it's gone. Because time was suddenly exact enough to trust, clockmakers started adding minute hands to the dials. Bosses caught on to this so fast, they stopped paying for completed jobs and started paying for hours worked instead. Being late suddenly became a very real problem, absolutely ruining the relaxed vibe as time literally turned into money. There was a massive flaw hidden in all this, though. Pendulums were completely useless on wild ocean waves. The rocking water ruined the swinging motion, leaving sailors totally blindly guessing the time out at sea. And not knowing the time meant they couldn't navigate, leading ships straight into hidden rocks. Just absolutely tragic. The British government got so desperate to stop this ongoing disaster that they offered a giant reward. A guy named John Harrison stepped up and basically spent his entire life trying to fix this crisis. He eventually built this beautifully intricate spring-powered clock, safely tucked inside a wooden box that ignored the rough waves entirely, saving countless sailors' lives. After that breakthrough, time became a massive cultural flex. Rich men started carrying pocket watches on fancy gold chains, just dangling them around to show off their power and wealth. Suddenly, everyone out there wanted to own their own time right in the palm of their hand. Moving into the 1800s, we ran into an absolute disaster of our own making. Fast trains started traveling all across large countries, but every single city stubbornly kept its own local time. You'd have two high-speed trains trying to share one track based on completely different clocks, and they would just crash head-on. To fix all that madness, leaders finally sliced the world into 24 safe time zones in 1884. Then, science pushed things even further. By 1927, we got quartz clocks, where a tiny battery shocks a quartz crystal to make it buzz steadily, making exact watches super cheap. And then, 1955 arrived, bringing the incredibly precise atomic clock. Space travel required something way crazier than a buzzing crystal, though. Rockets actually need exact fractions of a second to function up there. A tiny mistake destroys a rocket instantly, exactly like a video game lagging for a single millisecond and crashing your entire console into a frozen screen. So humans literally looked deep inside tiny atoms just to count their vibrations. It turns out atoms never speed up and they never slow down. By counting them, we unlocked the most perfect, unwavering beat possible in the entire universe. Our entire modern digital world heavily leans on these atomic clocks to survive now. Satellites map our roads, cell phones constantly sync up. It's actually terrifying when you realize that if just one of these atomic clocks fails, bank computers automatically reject money transfers, and airplanes completely lose their flight paths. It's wild that we all casually carry this intense atomic time right in our pockets everywhere we go. We don't even set our smartphone clocks manually anymore. We just trust invisible signals beaming down from space to do it perfectly for us every single day. Just let that breathe for a second. Early farmers lived their entire lives caring about long, sprawling seasons. Now we live so frantically fast that we sit around stressing and counting every passing second. Our grand view of life has shrunk all the way down to these tiny, stressful little slivers. A second used to mean absolutely nothing to a human being. Now, a fraction of a moment literally dictates who wins an Olympic gold medal by a hair, or who makes millions of dollars executing rapid trades in the stock market. Every tiny microscopic fraction matters greatly. We basically fully disconnected from the wild earth, which moves so slowly and gently, completely far away from exactness. Instead, we captured the confusing sky in small chips and built human time, this rigid, cold rhythm that forcefully makes us obey alarms and screens constantly. We started out just innocently watching shadows to try and survive nature, eventually building grand tools to conquer it. But now, those exact tools manage us. It really leaves you in wonder, thinking about how we let the ultimate tool become our ultimate master. Anyway, if you had fun on this wild trip through time, please drop a like, share this with someone who's constantly running late, and definitely subscribe for more mind-bending stuff. Keep your eyes on the clock, and I'll catch you later.